Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
How's it going?
Things are good, things are good. No questions from anybody, just something on my mind. Something that's been on my mind for a long time. Something that we have a big problem with all over the Muslim world. I thought it was like a Desi thing. It's not. It's all over the Muslim world. It's hitting women, dude. And justifying it from Quran. Because you know the ayah says, وَضْرِبُهُنَّ, and hit them. And so using that to say, well, you're obviously allowed to hit women. And when I started looking up this subject, I wasn't satisfied with stuff that I read. It just didn't add up. So I decided to keep on digging. Until a couple of years ago, I went to, I still remember, Professor Abdul Halim in Oxford. And I sat with him and I took my Quran questions to him, and this was one of them. Help me understand this ayah. Right? And I want to tell you, I want to share with you what I learned from him and my own thoughts on it. But before I do, you know, most of the time when we talk about this ayah, we're like explaining this to non-Muslims.
Yeah.
Which is so ingenuine, dude. We need to have a conversation about this with Muslims.
Yeah.
This is our faith. This is our book. This is what we believe. I believe every single ayah is perfect. Every single ayah could not be any better than it is. It's the most beautiful gift of Allah on this earth. No ayat should be considered a curse. No ayat should be considered negative or, you know, why is that here?
Yeah.
Because if you even question why is this here, you're questioning the idea of Allah revealing Himself. Like the idea of Allah sending revelation, the greatest gift ever given. Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran. The unimaginably merciful is the one who taught the Quran. Like, even if you question or you think less of one ayah, what good is your iman? Where to go? So protecting the integrity of this ayah to me is like fundamental, because if, you know, and many Muslim women I've met have a problem with this ayah. And their concern is legitimate. But to have a problem with an ayah and you're Muslim, there needs to be something resolved here. Because you can I have a problem understanding this ayah, which is a little bit different from, actually no, it's a world different from, I have a problem with this ayah. You know, that's a crime. That's about faith itself, you know?
But how does one understand it?
That's the thing, right? Let's help people understand it. So first and foremost, every surah is perfect. You cannot take an ayah out of a surah, put it in a different surah. That's the first thing, right? So this belongs to Surah An-Nisa. This means it does not belong in Surah Al-Ma'idah or Tawbah or Baqarah, or it belongs in Surah An-Nisa. And Surah An-Nisa is a perfect conversation orchestrated by Allah, intended as such. In other words, the first thing when we understand an ayah is which surah is it placed in, what conversation is it a part of. So Surah An-Nisa has a number of legal instructions. It talks about another big subject for a lot of people, polygamy. It talks about inheritance law. It talks about the punishment of adultery. It talks the early punishments for adultery, at least. It talks about exceptional cases. It talks about who is it haram for you to marry. Now, you know what all of those things have in common? Every one of them, when Allah talks about them, He talks about the most unusual cases. That's the common thread that ties all of these together, the most unusual cases. First unusual case, if you were raising 4 girls as orphans, and they gained a certain age, and they're not your mahram, they're not part of your family, you're allowed to marry one of them, or 2 of them, or 3 of them, or whatever. Is that a usual case? Somebody raising 4 orphan girls? Or even polygamy, when it's talked about, which is a separate subject, it's talked about in the most unusual circumstance. You see what I'm saying? Even more unusual. Like, it's uncomfortable even to listen. حُرِّمَتْ عَلَيْكُمْ أُمَّهَاتُكُمْ وَبَنَاتُكُمْ وَخَالَاتُكُمْ. Your mothers are haram for you to marry. Your aunts, your daughters are haram for you to marry. Your aunts are... Why would Allah say that? He's not talking about normal circumstances. He's talking about psychologically disturbed, weird people out there. Some crazy case can happen, so this needs to be spelled out. See, the thing with law is not for law-abiding citizens. Actually, laws are for criminals. They cover the periphery of society, not the main center of society. That's what Surah An-Nisa is doing. It's actually covering the outlying crazy case situations, here's what you're going to do. Now you know how to deal with these extreme situations, which automatically covers all the normal situations, right? If you keep that in mind, then you get to this ayah. And even that hit them is part of a very long ayah, which begins with men are caretakers of women. Now tell me, caretaker, qawwam, the same word shares a root with the name of Allah, qayyum. Allah is the caretaker of everything. Do you imagine Allah is caretaker hitting, striking?
No.
Is that part of His care?
No.
That's not the thought that comes in your mind when you think of taking care. It's already being negated as the ayah begins. And what are they authority in what sense? قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاء بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Because Allah gave some preference over others. Allah did not say because Allah gave men preference over women. He could have said that, it's His words. He could have said بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ الرِّجَالَ عَلَى النِّسَاء أو بِمَا فَضَّلَهُمُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِنَّ. He could have said it because Allah preferred men over. He said because Allah gave some preferences to some over others. In other words, women have certain things they have preference in, so Allah gave them certain benefits, and men were given certain benefits. And in this case, men have been given the responsibility of maintaining women. Okay, fine. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. And because of what they spend from their money. فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهِ. Then good women are subservient to Allah. I'm adding to Allah because that's what qunut is used in the Quran. It's not subservient to their husbands. It's qunut everywhere in the Quran, like dua al-qunut. Qaniteen, qumu lillahi qaniteen. Every time it's used for Allah. How are you going to say now it's being used for husbands? Good women are subservient to Allah. Hafidhatun lil ghayb, they're guardians of what is in the unseen. Meaning they guard their dignity and they guard their faith, even when their husband's not around. Hafidhatun lil ghayb. That's one of the meanings. There are other meanings too. Bima hafidhullah, on account of what Allah decided that should be guarded. Then He says, now, by the way, so far they're obedient to Allah and they guard the chastity of the marriage and their own chastity. They guard the integrity. They don't cheat on their husbands, basically. Okay.